Is there a dog in the house? I could sure use a dog. There are times in a small person's day when they can't get along. Life can be easier, warmer and sweet, with a nose at your knees, 4 feet at your feet. I know I'd feel better. I might even eat any old rubber-nosed dog will do. Piebald, hairless, and ugly, one tooth in front, none in back, smelly with bad breath and shingles, pedigreed or poochy, I really don't care, 'cause I promise I'd take good care of him or her. If he wet on the floor, I'd clean up, 'cause he'd be my friend forever, and little mistakes wouldn't come between me and my pal. Now is there a dog in the house? I could sure use a dog. There are times in a small person's day when they can't get along. Life can be easier, warmer and sweet, with a nose at your knees, 4 feet at your feet. I know I'd feel better. I might even eat any old rubber-nosed dog will do.
I just wanted to say welcome and thank you for coming on what would have been Jean's 81st birthday. February 5th. And I want to introduce myself because I don't know a lot of you or haven't met a lot of you until just now, and which is crazy that there's people like, I've known Jean for over 20 years, and the other day I was talking to Bob and Jean Carson, and they've known Jean for 50 years, something like that, 40 years. And I said, look, our paths have never crossed, you know, like, how is this possible? And Bob said a really cool thing, I thought it described it perfectly, about how Jean is, all our circles of friends were like, you know, the rings around Saturn, or the moons around Jupiter, you know, we're all in our different circle, but we don't jump from ring to ring, you know, there's all these separate circles. It's fascinating to me. Anyway, I'm Karin, and I met Jean, I don't know, 20 some years ago when she became my gardener. I just bought a house looking for a garden. I wanted the birds in the yard. And Barbara Deutsch said, you can't just have birds, you have to have a whole ecosystem. You have to have butterflies and bees and all kinds of things. And so I said, how do I do that? She said, talk to Jean Amos, she's your gal. And so Jean became my gardener, and like you probably have all experienced, when you get into the gravitational pull of Jean Amos, you get sucked right in. And I've been friends with her ever since. So anyway, that's my story. I wanted to introduce what's going on here with the program today. There's pictures back there that we pulled from her house and her phone and things like that. It's just a random sample of photos we found. So if you're not in it or represented, it's just because I didn't find them. And what's fun for me is she left, I don't know how many files, which she called her interesting files. I don't know if you're familiar with those. And it's been a rich experience going through her files. I mean, I feel like it's a lens onto her life, or her brain or something. There were quotes she liked, there were photos, there were interesting little cartoons, there were serious science articles, serious articles about her causes that she cared about. A lot of cats and dogs, though, let me say. Anyway, I found a document that she had written in 1981, and it's outdated, but it's her last will and testament. It's actually probably the first will and testament. But in it, she wanted for her memorial just something very simple with a few friends saying a few words about their encounters with Jean. But the thing she specified was she wanted to have this song played called Didn't She Ramble? And I looked it up, and there's a Didn't He Ramble, a classic New Orleans funeral song or second line song. But she wanted it played dirge style by a flugelhorn soloist. Didn't even know what a flugelhorn is, and certainly don't know a soloist. So instead, Ross put together a bunch of songs, a playlist that represented Jean's passion, her focus, her anti-war stance, her social justice, her relationships, things like that. So that's what the music is. We couldn't find a soloist. Just one thing before we start the actual speakers, I would just like to have a few seconds of silent reflection about Jean. So just not a few minutes, just a few seconds. Thank you, everyone. With that, I'm going to introduce Ross Burkhart. He's our first speaker, and he'll introduce the next one. It's a tough crowd.
Good afternoon. A poem, brief remarks, a second poem, concluding remarks. The poem is titled, Remembering Jean, a Chabacano Salute. San Francisco, Sunday afternoon, Noe Valley. Friends assembled, sharing memories, giving thanks that we were in Jean's life, smiling fondly as we say farewell. We knew Jean in many different guises: sister, aunt, singer, landscape gardener, sympathetic listener, dedicated voter, TV producer, birder, raconteur, kind neighbor, letter writer, environmentalist, whistleblower, jigsaw puzzle solver, manatee lover, musician, proud red diaper baby, patron of the arts, steadfast friend. Today, a moment etched in memory. We pause to celebrate Jean's life, her joie de vivre, and her legacy. Boundless joy, extraordinary grace. Jean was a presence, singular and strong. We loved her generosity and warmth. We're better off by far for having known her. Our world is less complete now that she's gone. Yet, as the pain of loss recedes in time, we treasure special moments shared with Jean. The joyful music that she made still lingers, and we rejoice as we bid her adieu. I first met Jean Amos in 2003, and I consider myself fortunate to have been a small part of her life for the next 2 decades. Some of you knew her longer than that, some less, but all of us knew a decent and dynamic woman who pursued many interests and accomplished many things during her 80 years on this planet. A relentless progressive, she would often say, "I've had a great life." And she did. Along the way, her unflagging devotion to justice inspired us all. Get ready. We each have our own special memories of time spent with Jane. Among my favorites are 2 birding excursions we enjoyed in Mexico and Belize with our guide, Mark Reddy. The Chabacanos had a great time together, each trip culminating with a hastily staged musical review highlighting humorous aspects of the previous week. In Mexico in 2003, Gene composed Still Counting, an avian tribute masquerading as a frustrated bird's lament. Picture Jean, if you will, and recall her melodic voice as she sings. And we have a stand-in singer because she's better than singer than I am.
So, Jean was so droll. And she and I, well, there was a group of us that went traveling with the naturalist Mark Reddy, and that's where we met Ross. And at the end of it, we discovered kind of in the middle of this trip, this was in West Mexico, that we all were kind of hams. And so we started composing songs about our experience on the trip. It was a birding trip, and Jean really liked going birding, but she always felt frustrated at trying to remember the names of the birds and trying to see the bird. And I was worse yet at that.
And she had a song about it.
Yes, and here's the song. Another gull, another jay, breakfast with roosters, 50 birds a day. I'm on the border with bird disorder, and they're still counting. Listen, a little warbler singing on top that tree. Mark says, you know that warbler? They all look like birds to me. A flash of green, a splash of red. I bathed in bundle from toe to head. Through jungles prowling, my stomach's growling, and they're still counting.
But wait, there's more. In an email composed on Christmas Day, 2017, Jean reported, "My traveling wings are now folded, so I flap around happily right here in San Francisco. The Marine Mammal Center is another place I volunteer at and wouldn't give up for anything. A great place to be. I drive across the Golden Gate Bridge into the Marin Headlands where the Mammal Center is, so I get to sniff the wild hills, enjoy the ocean, and see the occasional coyote before going to my shift. Love it. All is good here, and I am feeling so grateful for my friends. I wish all of us a more enlightened 2018, our lives might really depend upon it." How prophetic she was. And then in December 2020, when I described my health status to her, Jean responded, "All good wishes to you, Ross, as you watch your life changing. I am ahead of you there. Several life-changing increments which have made me acknowledge senescence and a certain humility. I don't think I even had that in my 60s. But life continues to be fascinating in its complexity in a way which has brought a new awe and a new appreciation. I may even have joined the old ladies who one sees sitting quietly on the side nodding, yes. I'm sorry, but it's hard for me to picture Jane Amos as Pastor Young as an old lady. But how do you sum up a person's life in their words? A poem by another San Franciscan, Robert Frost, comes to mind. "Two roads diverged in the yellow wood. I'm sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the underwood. Then took the other, was just as fair, having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay, and leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet, knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere ages and ages hence. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled, and that has made all the difference. From the boulevards of Paris to the wild parrots of Telegraph Hill, and from the avant-garde artistry of Burning Man to the burning splendor of Belize and beyond, Jean traveled countless roads in her life as an engaged citizen, living life to the leaves, thinking globally, acting locally, and always making a difference in the lives of those she encountered along the way. For that, we are forever grateful. In fact, your presence here today is testimony to the assertion that Jean did indeed lead an extraordinary life. She fought the good fight for what she believed in, and she was a positive example for all of us. The good news is that through us and through our everyday actions, Jean will continue to promote the important lessons of her life: justice, dedication, perseverance, responsibility, generosity, devotion to family, loyalty to friends, empathy for others, a sense of humor, and a sense of adventure. Thanks for the memories, Jean, for the shining example that you were, and for the absolute difference that you made in our lives. We will miss you, my friend. Rest in peace. Now you sing with the angels. And I invite Lisa to come.
I'm Lisa Seri. I first met Jean in 1971. She was introduced to me by my sister, Martha, who worked with her at UC Medical Center. Martha was an audiologist. Jean worked in the typing pool. But they found each other, even though I can't imagine how they found each other, because it's a big place and they were in very different places. But like finds like. And at that point, I lived 2 blocks away from UC, and Jean lived just around the corner on Stanton. And I was so much closer to her than my sister that I became a more frequent visitor at her house and she at my house, me and this other person that I live with. And she was engaging and lovely and dynamic, as we all know. And our paths began to cross more frequently. I went out of the country for quite a while and went back to the East Coast. When I came back to San Francisco, I lived with her for a couple of weeks, months, while I found my own place. And she was always someone that I could check in with. She became important to me. We share a lot, and we traded hobbies. You know, I got into knitting, and she did too. And she was into birds, which I was curious about, but never really took up as a passion. She was involved in Barbara Deutsch's butterfly project, which I took on wholeheartedly on my country property 3 hours north of here to try and move the habitat for the pipevine swallowtails up north, so that as global warming warmed up its usual habitat. It would have plants ready for it to breed on and nectar on and eat on when they arrive north. We all know how avidly curious she was, and she followed that. A week before she died, she called me and told me of her plans for checking out, the psilocybin mushroom, which I knew quite a bit about. It's grown and developed half a mile down the road from me. And I had used it quite a bit. And she was curious, and she was going to do it. And she told me how she was going to do it, and, under what kind of guidance. And that was all, her way of dealing with it. So, I guess I just want to say that I think that she left this world the same way we knew her while she was alive, which is unbelievably curious, willing to do anything, almost anything, and willing to share. So I will miss her generosity, her spirit, her unusual spirit. I will say I've always thought of her as a diva, and that as a basic part of her personality. I think I knew her for 5 years before she ever told me about her singing professionally. And I could never believe that someone who had that much talent and that much success at such an early age could possibly just give it up. But there were other things for her to experience, and she never looked back, as you all probably know. And it wasn't diva in a tragic Maria Callas, drama queen kind of way. She was a performer. And whatever she did with elan and panache. And then there was that great swashbuckle that she had. She would just end things with, "Ain't it grand?" And I remember her saying that 50 million times, "Ain't it grand?" And that was Jean. We all loved her. And she will be missed. Thank you. Oh, and I do want to introduce now Janet Lohr, who was her very, very close buddy, and they shared a lot.
Well, I thought a lot about what I want to say, and there's just so much to say about Jean that, I try. She was an incredible singer, and I've known her for 30 years, and I hardly ever heard her sing. But she had recorded some of her original songs, which we were planning on playing for you, but we couldn't get it to work with this PA system. But we have a wonderful videographer who's recording all of this, and we're going to put her songs onto the video, because I know you will love to hear them. There's humor, there's sweetness, there's just Jean, and she was a really good singer. But like so many things that she did in her life, she just when she got really good at it, it was like, okay, I've done that enough, time to do something else. I saw her do that over and over again, whereas so many people would just find their niche in life and just go for it, right, for the rest of their days. She was constantly interested in something new, and it's one of the amazing and wonderful things about her. Anyway, rather than going on about talking about Jane, because I know so many people are going to, I wanted to sing for you a couple more of the songs that we wrote together. They're just silly things that we wrote during the trips that we did. Jean was she was mosquito bait. It didn't matter what, please, anything. They found her. And when we went to Belize, she was just she tried to be prepared, but she was absolutely miserable because of all the things that bit her. But anyway, so this is a song that she wrote about that. Look at me, I've got 40 different chemicals for fleas. Lots of Pontiac-sized pork bellies, of Cipro and quinine and snack food. I'm off to Belize, Lomotil, doxycycline, diphenolate, atropine. Some little yellow pills for spleen, and Pepto-Bismol. Get a forklift, I'm off to Belize. Ross, I need your help on this one. So this was a wonderful place called Coos Hill that we stayed at, where they let us go inner tubing down the river. I left my cabana in the morning, tramping through the jungle, just a hug in my tooth, mud between my toesies, skeeters in my nosies, jump into the river, just a splashing like a herb, big ass bouncing on a boulder, flabby windows getting colder, tubing, 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 roaring river, tubing, 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 roaring river.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
My name is Katie Kofer, and I think that I'm here to bring in the part of Jean's kind of roots and family connection, the devotion to her family, and her musical roots. Because although I met Jean in the early '90s, I know Jean because my mother, Marjorie Kofer, who was a classical singer in Los Angeles, was very close friends with Arnett and Adelaide in Los Angeles, starting from the '60s. And I wonder how many people here knew Arnett and Adelaide. Yeah, so, yeah. Well, I think you will agree that they were just a tremendous part of Jean's life. She was very, very, very close to them, but in the '60s, in the early '60s, I mean, my mother sang with Arnett and Adelaide. Arnett organized. He was they both were tremendous musicians and composers. And they ran a little opera company, kind of semi-amateur, semi-professional in Los Angeles. And so I'm 14 or 15 years younger than Jean, so I was at the age where my mom didn't have anywhere to leave me during rehearsals, so she let me to all the rehearsals with Arnett and Adelaide, and that's how I knew them actually very well before I ever met Jean. But I always heard about Jean as this very kind of glamorous presence somewhere, this incredible folk singer who was flitting around the world in New York, and Jean, women folk, and so I don't think, I may have seen her kind of on one of her visits in Los Angeles, but I don't really remember that. But Arnett, the Amoses had a tremendous influence on my life because of the fact that they moved to Germany in the 50s for political reasons, because Arnett was blacklisted. They moved to Germany, and I don't know very much about that period of their life, although I talked to Sarah here today, whose parents also met Arnett and Adelaide in Germany. So I mean, that maybe somebody knows. I think that Arnett was maybe a music director with some, I don't know, wouldn't have been, I don't know what he did there. But they influenced my mother to move to Germany. So, you know, and my mother in 1970 with me when I was 14 said, "We're going to Germany, and I'm going to try and get a job singing in Germany, and it'll be easy, you'll love it." And this was mainly because Arnett and Adelaide said, yeah, it'll be great. It's a great experience for her. Get her out of California. And it totally shaped my life, and I really don't think it would have happened if Arnett and Adelaide hadn't done it, and if Jean and Chico hadn't been their guinea pigs. So fast forward to, believe it or not, the early 90s. I stayed there for over 20 years in Germany, and then I decided I was going to come back to California and to San Francisco. And so my mother said, well, you got to get in touch with Jean. You know, we'll go visit Jean, and we'll meet up with Jean. So with the generosity that everybody here has already mentioned and knows about, Jean kind of sight unseen welcomed me to stay for my first weeks. I think I stayed for my first month at her house here in Noe Valley. And that was my introduction to San Francisco, coming from Germany, which is, you know, a little more straight-laced, I guess. And Jean really, you know, initiated me to all of that, and she was my introduction to San Francisco, and we stayed in touch. I became a therapist here in Noe Valley, and we would go out for lunch. And so another thing I can add to the Jean quotes, you know, this "I've had a great life." Almost every time she would say something like that, "I've had a great life," and then she would say, "And I eat like a goddamn princess."
From Bruce Susan. I first met Jean in the late 90s. We worked together for a few years. We worked on some wonderful landscapes in San Francisco and Berkeley and in her own backyard. Two wonderful memories I have. First, we would have the best lunches in San Francisco. We would have Japanese, Thai food, Latin food, Ethiopian food, you name it. It was absolutely wonderful. With full bellies, we took on the wonderful tradition of siesta. We would find a shady spot under a wonderful tree on a quiet street. We would put our chairs in the recline setting and rest for 15 to 20 minutes. It was such a gift to share that simple, quiet time with my friend Jean. Jean's heart was expansive, and I and my wife and two children have been blessed deeply by our friendship. My heart is forever grateful for our friendship, and her spirit is deeply embedded in my soul. So, to all the people that her life has touched, and that is many, I think we were touched by a very human angel. Blessings to you all. Bruce, Marianne, Tobe, and Annie Rose Souza here in Vermont. Back to you, Karen.
The women folk that Jean sang with are all located on the East Coast, and they can't travel here, so they sent a little blurb I'm going to read. And then I'm going to try to get Mina's recording going so you can hear that, as well as see if anyone else wants to say anything up here. But I want to read to you what the women folk read or sent to us. The three remaining members of the women folk, Barbara Cooper, Lenny Sorensen, and I, this is from Lala, send our greetings to this bittersweet gathering for Jean Amos. We are all friends and colleagues today, united in remembering her. Jean felt, and this is Lala speaking now, Jean felt like a close friend to me from the first time I met her, which is when she came to a women folk rehearsal in late 1963 to audition to be our 5th member. 4 of us had been together since the origin of the group, but it took us some time to find the right person for the 5th spot. Jean was a yes immediately, and for me, her arrival was the real beginning of the women folk. I loved making music with her, and I loved hanging out with her after rehearsals and talking endlessly over pots of tea. I can see that. Our conversations were earnest and also hilarious, a marvelous combination, and this was something that did not fade over 3 years of work and travel together. I'm so happy now to say that Jean and I kept in touch after the women folk. We didn't meet or talk often, but whenever we did, it was as if we had just been chatting the day before. She visited me in Los Angeles after each of us moved back to the West Coast from New York,
And we were together in person for the last time when the women folk had a reunion in 2007 in Charlottesville, Virginia. Her take on life was always refreshing, and she lived completely in character. I remember her as a serious thinker and a playmate, as someone who lived what she believed, whose money was where her mouth was. Love to you, Jean, as you journey into the infinite, into the next. Yeah, that's nice.
So this is from Vicki Panosian, who's also on the East Coast and was unable to travel. This is 2023, Chinese New Year of the Water Rabbit, symbolizing peace, longevity, and hope. January 22nd, the Festival of Spring, through February 5th is the Festival of Lanterns. I envision Jean resting on a cloud of peace, reviewing her past life, well-lived, and planning her next excursion through the galaxies, hoping to be dazzled by all the wonders yet to be revealed. How I cherish our 40-plus years of friendship, mostly happy times, plus that segment of challenging events on which to grow our strengths. What epitomizes her compassion and kindness is when I was ill, she was ready to fly cross country just to be with me. This was when she herself would have been at a great peril health risk. Though Jean is of the opinion that this life is all there is and make the most of it, my hope is that she is pleasantly surprised and that she not only lives on in all the memories of all the beings that she touched, yet also ad infinitum. I am honored to be of this circle. Carol Vicki Kenosi.
When I was looking for stationery on which to write my thoughts about my special friend, Jean, I found this paper with a big fluffy cat with big green eyes, and I cried out, "Great, perfect for notes about my friend Jeannie." I never knew Jeannie without a cat. They were all poos, and I'd known her since she was in her 20s. Jeannie was one of my oldest friends. She was young and beautiful, very beautiful. She came from San Francisco with a singing group, the Women Folk, to do a gig at CBS television. It was the era of the folk singer. Ralph Curtis was the director of the show, and you can just about guess what happened. Ralph fell in love with the divine Jean Amos, and they soon married. So Jean, Ralph, and the cat set up home in New York's Upper West Side. One day, when she came home from work, there sat Ralph eating a bowl of leftover cat food from the fridge. Jeannie didn't say a word. If it was good enough for Bruce, it was good enough for Ralph. I, at the time, worked at WNYE-TV, the New York City Board of Education television station. Jeannie applied for and got a job as my production assistant. She was also a musician. She was an artist. She was a writer, a poet, all gifts that made her contributions so far and above what I could have hoped for from an assistant. She was perfect. Jean was a woman for all seasons. And so our journey as friends began. We started working together on the series La Gloria de España, the glory of Spain. 30 programs on the history, the literature, the art, and the music. Ah, the music of Spain. We were lucky to receive an invitation from the Spanish embassy to travel to Spain and do on-location filming. What a gift, and what an adventure. For Jean, a guitarist, to hear flamenco in the country of its origins, that was magic. We worked a lot. We laughed a lot. We learned a lot. and sang a lot. She would stop to say hola to everyone. A kid, a dog, a cat, a butterfly, a tiny worm, anything that lived or didn't. She was interested in everything. Jeannie was an inspiration, and she expanded my horizons. The world was a museum for her. During our years working together, one of our series required teaching children expressions of good and polite manners in Spanish. I was getting the kids ready to travel by subway, by bus, or on foot. Expressions like, don't yell, no grites, don't push, no empujes, and don't spit, no escupas. Jeannie loved the sound of these expressions. They just always made her laugh. 30 years later, we were ending our conversations with no grites, no empujes, no escupas, followed by peals of laughter. I loved how all those many years later, those expressions lingered in her memory. Jeannie lived to make the world better. Better for people, better for animals, better for the planet. During one of my rare trips to San Francisco, Jeannie took me to meet an old woman whose only daughter no longer visited her. They didn't get along, is what I was told. But Jeannie filled that space for that woman, maybe once a week for I don't know how long. She also cooked weekly in a soup kitchen. I can't remember for how many years I heard about that soup kitchen. She was an activist and an idealist. There was never a question about where Jeannie's heart lay. She once gave me an envelope to mail from New York City going to California. I learned that it was for someone who was not to know who sent it. It contained a bank check for someone who needed the money, and Jeannie did not want the person to know that it was she who had sent it. In the Jewish religion, we have an expression, tikkun olam, repairing the world. Repairing the world was Jeannie's religion. Jeannie, my dear one-of-a-kind friend, your life was so special, so generous, so full of adventures and beauty, so giving to so many. You, my Jeannie, made a difference to so many humans, so many kittens, so many animals, so many lives. Rest easy, my Jeannie. For us you live. We are richer for knowing you. I, for one, my friend, am thankful beyond measure that one day the beauty of a young girl appeared in my space, and life was never the same. This friend will never forget La Gloria de Jeannie.
I'm Richard Anderson. My wife and I moved to 564 Elizabeth Street, right down the street from Jean, in 1995. So she was the first person that I really met on the block, and she's been a force on the block for a long time. And she and I shared the passion of gardening. That was the thing that we really did like. And she shared some of her garden people. Bruce was one of them, Jan was one of them, Mary was one of them, and she deeply enjoyed watching my garden evolve. And one of the things that I wanted to build a trellis to make the wall next door to our house look more beautiful. So I had a very large trellis built. And she said, well, you've got to pick something that would be appropriate for butterflies. So I got a fritillaria, passion flower, and I researched it carefully, as I do. You know, the second brain makes amazing things possible. And I found a particular
cultivar called Quasar, which was noted for its rich growth. And I'm figuring if I'm going to be feeding caterpillars, I need lots of leaves. So this thing was immensely productive. So when it started, of course, it's small. And by this time, Jean had a field area. And she said, I'll breed some caterpillars for the Gulf fritillarium. So she brought me some caterpillars. And so, that was the first year. And the second year, it got bigger. And the third year, it just completely took off. We had so many leaves and so many caterpillars. And so at this point, Jean said, can I borrow some of your caterpillars? I don't have enough caterpillars this year. They haven't found, I don't know what happened. So she would take caterpillars down to her yard. And so when the caterpillars become butterflies, she would come sit in the yard and we would count butterflies, and we would try to get a count of how many we could see at once. And my best count was an 8 count. I got 8 flying around that I could somehow identify. And she wasn't sure I got an 8. But anyway, we were very happy to watch the butterflies. And as time went on, my other great memory of hers was going to Rainbow Grocery with her. I wasn't able to drive, and so once a week we drove to Rainbow Grocery. This was during the pandemic. So she would drop me off at the door, and I'd get in line, and we'd go to Rainbow together, and we would discuss our various discoveries at Rainbow, which cheeses were amazing, and which bread was the best. And that was a weekly event, and this is when I got to hear a lot of these stories of her. I got a little hint of her music. She didn't talk about much. Everyone's right, but she just, I made records, I was on Ned Sullivan, it's like no big deal. And then I would hear about, the soup kitchen, and I would hear about this and that, and it was like weekly, so it was cumulative. We had this, effective, and we would share our political things, and I would tell her about what's going on with me, and she would tell me what's going on with her. And she was indeed a fine listener. So, I think that's all I want to say. She was really something. So I'll always remember the butterflies, and I'll always cherish the caterpillars that she started my collection.
I used to live in Noe Valley. I used to live at the corner of Elizabeth and Sanchez. And when I started making the wild parrots of Telegraph Hill, I wrote a little article for the Noe Valley Voice. And all of a sudden, Jean Amos came into my life. And she never left it. We were birders, we were bird lovers. All the way through the Wild Parrot movie, she was a supporter, very low-key. I didn't even know she was a singer until today. And then later I made I made Pelican Dreams about California brown pelicans. She was there. We had a rough cut screening at Pier 39. She came, she gave feedback along with lots of other people so that I could re-edit the film and make it better. And she was also a very generous, very, very under the radar contributor to these films. Then came the film that I'm going to premiere this year, called Refuge, about swimming in San Francisco Bay. She came to the screening at the Roxy when I was getting feedback from folks. Because this is what I do. I have blind spots because I often shoot and edit my own movies, and I need to vet the film before it's done with an audience so that I can find out what's confusing and what's going on too long and what they want added. So she was there. I saw her again. And she contributed to that film too. And finally, I saw her at Rainbow. Quite often. But she was so modest. I mean, this is what I'm getting from what I hear today, too. She was interested in my work. She was a fantastic supporter and fan. And over the long haul, I mean, for 20 years. And I will really, really miss her. And thank you all for being here and talking and telling me some more news about Jean Amos. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Dave, and I get to brag for a minute. I think I'm the oldest person that has known Jean. When I was 12, Adelaide was giving me and my sister piano lessons, and my father, God rest his soul, was trying to become an opera singer. So he was taking lessons from from Arnett. So the only thing about this was all three of us were at their house every Saturday morning for a couple of years. And my regret was that my dad would practice at our house too. And he was a baritone trying to become a basso profundo. And it just sounded like a whale was being slaughtered. I don't know what it was bad. You could hear him, and the worst thing about Arnett was he made you sing. When you were taking lessons from Arnett, you sang. You didn't get to play milquetoast. You had to sing. So here's how it sounds around Christmas in my house. Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas! Ho, 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 ho! Jingle bells, jingle bells. Yeah, couldn't just sing it like everybody else. As far as Jeannie was concerned, I saw Jeannie, the break between when I had to wait for my sister's lessons to be over. Jeannie would come into the kitchen. She lived there. She lived with Arnett and I. She was 20 years old. She was at Cal State Northridge, and of course, I got to hear her sometimes play music at home. And I fell in love. That was my first girlfriend, and hadn't seen her again for many years. And I guess the thing about Jeannie is music was at the heart of everything she did. It was even when she greeted somebody, "Hi, Dave!" It was never just "Hi, Dave." I really appreciated how someone could be so humble and yet so full of life at the same time. And I'll bet you not one of you in here has ever argued with her. She was like that. And if you did, you lost. So I just want to thank you again for making my day. It was really wonderful. My wife came also. And
she was a great cook.
Yeah. I mean, that's the last. She just cooked. I don't know how she did it. But she did it from her chair in the dining room while we were having wine. Somehow in the kitchen. So that's enough out of me. I thank you very much. And I really respect and love Jean. She was something else. Thank you.
So I'm Jessica Anderson, and I live at 564 Elizabeth Street with Richard. And as he said, I don't remember when we met Jean. She was one of the first people we met when we moved in 1995. So it was a really long time. And we too love cats and have always had cats in our lives. And one of our cats now is quite senior. He's 19 years old. But in his youth, he would travel the whole back part of the Elizabeth, 23rd Street, Noe, Castro block, which to a cat is just their domain. And one of the things that we like to do is we would come down our stairs to go out onto Olympia Street, and then walk down about 5 houses, and then go back into the backyard in Jean's house, because it was an easy entrance to the back quarter. And so Jean knew Hector and was very close to him, and she loved him. He was a big old tomcat. And about in August of last year, I got a poem published about Hector in his aging years called Aging in Place. And I told Jean this, and I said, Jean, I'm a published author now. I'm enjoying that voice. And because once a year they do like a literature from the neighborhood kind of thing. And so my poem was in there. I was really quite excited. And Jean was excited too, and that's something that I'd like to point out about Jean was so excited about the creative potential of being a human that it didn't matter if it was her creativity, your creativity, didn't matter at all, she was all excited. So she immediately went out to find a North Valley Voice, our local paper, to read my poem, and within, I would say 6 or 7 hours, she had gone out, found a newspaper so she could read my poem published, and she sent me a message, and she said, did you know I had written a song about a cat? And he was a big old cat just like Hector. And so she wrote me this email about Fleetwood, which some of you may have heard, and sent me the MP3, and if my technology works properly, I will be able to play you Jean's voice singing Fleetwood. And this was the email message that she sent me about Fleetwood. Fleetwood and his sister Delphine, both named by my dad, showed up in the vacant hill next to their house. They have 2 cats, so the quick snatching of their food and Fleetwood's large size was a periodic household discussion. After a couple of years, my folks heard a lady outside her apartment calling, "Baby, baby, come on, baby." And they saw Fleetwood take off toward her door. They spoke to her on the street one day, and she said she was moving with her cat to a little house she had bought. They didn't mention anything about their history with him and chuckled, figuring he now slept on silken pillows. A sweet ending for a real tough guy. So this is Jean Amos singing. I've got to keep away from that microphone. Could it be a disaster? All right, should I put it here? Pretty sure. Okay, Jean, I'm putting the speaker right here so you can hear yourself. I know you're going to.
Fleetwood comes sleeking in the kitchen like an outlaw. His body big and battered, he smells like a buffalo. He grabs his food like he lives on borrowed time. Fleetwood. His claws are long, lethal, his mind is slow and wary. The colony of fleas he wears would weigh a better cat down. His feet are heavy, but his voice is never heard. Ash came Romeo, never trust your brother, blunder just to stay alive. Kicked out kitten, he's a hard time for life. Fleetwood will survive. How he came to the neighborhood is a matter of conjecture. Deserted as a kitten, maybe thrown out in the street. scavenger and all-time loser, only looking for his next free meal. The only thing will ever bring him down is an unexpected two-ton wheel. He's known to jump 20 feet down just to get away. Ash can Romeo never touched your brother blind just to stay alive. Kicked out kid and he's a hard time feline. He would survive. Moonlight prowler, a pussyfoot and Randy with a taste for the morning rays. He kills a mouse in a vacant lot and snoozes for the rest of the day, 'cause he got no appointments. All he's got is time. Fleetwood. But he always wakes up kicking from the dreaming that pursues him. Another big dog, another mean Tom, or an encounter with the man. The bruises he's received will never heal. Ash and Romeo never touched your brother blunder just to stay alive. Kicked out kid and he's a hard time feline. Fleetwood will survive.
My name is Sarah Westbrook, and I just wanted to share a little bit about what I know of Jean. My parents knew Jean's parents, and therefore they knew Jean. They met in Germany, in about, I would say, 55. And so I don't know much about all that time other than Jean's dad was an incredible singer, and my dad was an incredible singer, so they just loved to sing and philosophize and smoke their pipes. And in 1989, when I was about 28, I live up in Portland, Oregon, and I was going to come down to San Francisco for the first time, and my dad said, well, you have to call Jean Amos and meet her and stay with her. I don't know Jean Amos. I barely know the story. But I did. I called her, and she was delightful, as you have all testified to, and as you know. She just welcomed me. Of course I could stay at her house. All these things. The only caveat was, she won't be there. Because she was going to go on some archaeological dig somewhere in the world. And I thought, what an amazing woman. I really must meet her. But I did spend, I don't know, 3-4 days in her house, and I was there to cat sit flea bomb, remember? And I got there. I mean, again, I've never been to San Francisco before that, and she had coffee for me. She had beer in the fridge. She had wine. She had all sorts of food that I could cook, and pages of places I needed to go, and where I needed to eat, restaurants, everything. What's bus line? Everything. Tour guide. And I did them all. I had a great time. So ever since then, we were just best friends. She came to our wedding. She's just loved us quite well. But I do want to also note that I think she's always loved our cats and dogs more than us. The first thing she asked when she called was, how is, and then whoever was our creature at that point. The last time I saw Jean was in 2017. She came up to Portland to see the solar eclipse. And I had never seen one before, and it was an amazing, complete solar eclipse
Anybody here seen one before? Yeah, amazing. And maybe they use this language all the time, but I loved it. Jean loved it. There was the solar eclipse, and then there was the path of totality.
Yes.
Right? Who doesn't want to go to the path of totality? It was maybe a 20-minute drive from our house to get from just where you kind of see the eclipse to the path of totality. And Jean and I went along with a neighbor, and maybe it was just the three of us, brought our lawn chairs, set them out there, couldn't wait. And it was just the most lovely moment of I don't know, the universe as you watch the eclipse occur. And so I just want to end by saying, I just think Jean is now and has always been in the path of totalities.
My name is Alec Bash, and unfortunately, my wife and I only really knew Jean at the I'm Alec Bash, and my wife and I only knew Jean at the fringes of her life. It was many incredible conversations when we would pass on the street, on the sidewalks, and get into these, "Hi, nice to see you," and then 20 minutes later you realize that you really have to keep going to where you were going originally. But she was such an amazing person, and to hear her voice again in that song is certainly a wonderful thing, and I think if there were no other reason to be here, it would be to hear her voice again. But we moved into Noe Valley in 1974. I'd been a planner, and up until the early 70s, the city was largely in the hands of only pro-development forces. And one of the things that Jean did was to co-found the Friends of Noe Valley, which is an organization that is, I think it folded for a time and it was reborn again. But the Friends of Noe Valley was an effort at healing the world that we've talked about here, something that she wanted to do, and she wanted to be friends, and she was such a responsible person and caring about where she lived, which then became manifested in more of the gardening to care really at the grassroots levels of where she lived. So I just wanted to share that bit about the Friends of Noe Valley and the leading on the streets and how wonderful it always was whenever my wife and I just happened to see her. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kathy Keller, and I had the great fortune to volunteer at Martin's, and that's where I met Jean. And we were Tuesday lunch people, and then at some point she left and went to Fridays. So I totally lost touch with her. And we didn't really socialize there, but she was just such a presence wherever she was. So I knew her from that. And then in 2019, I had joined Nature in the City, and I went to their annual party in January, and there was Jean. And it's like, oh, hi, how are you? You know, we chatted, and then I said, oh, we should get together. And for the next, from January 2019 until early October 2022, so I call us COVID friends, because we spent so much time together. I guess we decided that if you're well, and I'm well, then we have no problem, and we can just do what we want. So she introduced me to so many restaurants, and one of my favorite quotes was, I'm a recreational eater. And we went away. I would stay at her house sometimes with my dog after an evening of wonderful food and a few many glasses of wine. And you know, so Scarlett and I would just sleep in the guest room. And she adored Scarlett. And anybody who knew Scarlett, because I always said she was the best dog in the world. And if I'm with anybody who knew Scarlett, I said, yeah, everybody says that about their dog. And the people chime in, no, she was the best dog in the world. She was very unusual. And so on Christmas morning, 2021, I'd taken Scarlett to the vet the night before. And it was like, well, stick around, she may go home tonight. Well, no, go ahead and go home, I'll call you in the morning. And the vet called me in the morning, we're talking, and suddenly the vet says, I have an emergency. And that was when Scarlett died. And I was bereft, because we'd been together for 10 years. And I mean, I said, well, I want to come pick her up. I said, okay, we'll lay her out. And who did I call? Jean. You know, would you go with me to pick up Scarlett? And I just remember walking in, the dog is covered up. I move the cover and it's just like, oh my God, she's gone. And Jean so respectfully stood back, she's crying, I'm crying. And I just thought of the generosity of, as much as she loved that dog, she had the respect to say, yes, this is for you. So during COVID, we went away 2 weekends, always took Scarlett with us. She loved to have Scarlett sleep on the bed with her, and we just had an amazing time. Films, she taught me so much about film. I go, it's like, that's a story, you just read it and there's nothing under it. So actually my friend Betsy and Jean were my favorite film companions because they just revealed so much that went right over my head. And I just could go on and on. We spent about 1 or 2 times a week for those 4 years. And I was actually in Turkey when Jean died. And I was still, mourning the death of Scarlett. And when I found out that Jean had died, I thought, I don't want to go home. I've lost so much there. I didn't know what to do without her. And so she was just, as everybody said, multifaceted and imaginative and generous. There are not enough superlatives for Jean. She was also quick to point out, you've told me that before. So we had many, many wonderful times together, and I'm glad all of you got to share somewhat in Jean's life. Thank you.
Okay. So, I just a couple things. I just want to thank everyone who helped pull this memorial event together. Thank you very much to everybody. And if you will bear with me for 1 minute, I want to read one poem and then I want all of you to go eat or drink or hang out in Mickle. And I read this poem and I thought about Jean because as her good friend Didi Puma said, Jean's interest, passion, focus was from the grand and sublime all the way to the dopey and silly. And so this is a very short poem and then we can get up and talk. It's called Feeding the Worms by Danusha Lamaris. Ever since I found out that earthworms have taste buds all over the delicate pink strings of their bodies, I paused, dropping apple peels into the compost bin. Imagine the dark, writhing ecstasy, the sweetness of the apples permeating their pores. I offer beets and parsley, avocado and melon, the feathery tops of carrots. I always thought theirs a menial life, eyeless and hidden, almost vulgar, though now it seems they bear a pleasure so sublime, so decadent, I want to contribute however I can, forgetting a moment my place on the menu.
Listen to me as I tell of a story. It's old and it's new to me. I love of your own self, and I know that you love me. I hear what you're saying, you know what I know. I sing for your fancy, and I tell you of you. Take of you anything that you give, and hear your fine stories, and tell you of mine. I feel you within me. Your life is my life. Soft fire and sadness. Listen to me as I tell of the story. It's old and it's new.